microphone.
Your mic is muted, please.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I would like to give an historic example and show how that is, as you just said, repeating itself. As Harley said earlier, the actual inventor of, one of the inventors of geopolitics, of course, is Halford Mackinder. And he wrote his seminal paper is the Geographical Pivot of History. And this he wrote in 1904. This is a very interesting year, what you see what followed it. And of course, geopolitics is just a different way, is a way of trying to make British imperialism polite discussion among people. So he goes through all sorts of things about history and blah, blah, blah. But what caught my mind is, what caught my attention was right in the middle of this, because the whole paper is actually a polemic against the Russian Empire. Mm-hmm. And he writes right in the middle of this, he said that the great problem, the great failure of the Roman Empire was to Latinize the Greeks. And therefore, it was the Greeks that Christianized the Russians and the Slavs. And this, he defines this as a great problem. And I found it rather interesting because this is the cultural warfare of the British, because the Greek Orthodox Church, orthodoxy, is not just the religion of Greece and Russia, but it is the Christianity of the East. The Orthodox churches, as you know, are throughout the Middle East. There's Armenia, there's Georgia. In Africa, there's Ethiopia. And these are all the countries that were one way or another targeted. And then right after this, he talks about the whole question of continental railways. He laments the fact that he says that of course the British Empire was built, and that building accelerated with the opening of the Suez Canal on maritime trade. The British Empire basically captured maritime trade. But he says that with the advent of continental railways, and at that time there were only two continental railways, one in the Russian Empire and one in the United States. He says this has transformed trade. No longer is sea trade, no longer will sea trade be prominent, because with railroads crisscrossing the entire length and breadth of Eurasia, this would allow the transport of goods directly from the exporting factory to the importing warehouse, without having to go through different operations in order to put it on a ship, take it to a ship. The ship goes to another port. Another train has to take it from that port to bring it to the customer. Mm-hmm. But with continental railways, this operation is direct. And he laments the fact that within a few decades, he says, railroads would be crisscrossing throughout Eurasia. Yeah. And this enormous area, basically the Russian Empire and China, is so rich with resources and would have so much potential. And we, as a naval power, marine power, would have no access to it because we can't bring the British Navy into Central Asia. And this is the big challenge for the empire. So that's quite clear. I mean, he doesn't say directly we have to conquer Russia, but it's quite clear. And if you realize what happened just a few months after the publication of this paper, the British ally in the Pacific, Japan, whose fleet was basically built by Great Britain, went to war against Russia in the Pacific. They sank the Russian fleet, and they defeated Russia in Manchuria in a very, very bloody war for both sides. That totally destabilized Russia. You had the 1905 revolution, and of course, that war was followed by World War I and the Russian Revolution. And the world, and if you look at a map of the world, and I want to see if I can share my screen. It might not be so clear, but this is a map that we published, and it's called the Eurasian Land Bridge. And it extends all the way into Africa and all the way into South America. And if you look at what's happening now, I should say one thing that was extremely interesting at the August summit in Alaska. One of the big issues that came up for discussion was building a Bering Straits tunnel. And that would have linked, if that is built and it's in discussion, President Trump said it's a good idea. And the Russians, of course, have been holding feasibility studies, et cetera, et cetera. And this would be a fantastic project and would establish a very peaceful relationship between the United States and Russia. But you see this whole region here. What do we see today? We see Ukraine, which is a key east-west point for the Trans-Siberian Railway. I mean, what has happened since 2013 is the implementation of Xi Jinping, the Chinese president's Belt and Road Initiative, which is precisely the idea of building transcontinental railways. Now, this is broken as far as almost totally broken as far as Europe is concerned, at least via Russia, because of the Ukraine conflict. And you have the Middle East. Since the invention of railroads, why has not been a railroad connecting the Middle East or Southwest Asia and Europe with Africa? Because as we all know, for the last 50 years, there's been a war here in the Middle East. There's been a series of wars. And the same thing now in Africa. If you go down and you look at the paths of these proposed rail lines that would unify all of Africa and make the Pan-African dream a reality. Mm-hmm. What do we see? We see wars. I should say wars against these governments using terrorism, etc.
Absolutely.
So I think this is the repetition of history, and this is the reason why we have to destroy the idea of geopolitics and get back to the idea of economic cooperation to bring the world together again. Okay, I leave it at that. I just want to preface this with a statement on Pan-Africanism, because African unity is absolutely necessary if these people are to be defeated. And the great Senegalese Pan-Africanist Sheikh Ante Diop, he said that there's only, in 1980, in an interview in 1980, he said there's only 3 countries in the world that are actually independent. And he said it's the United States, the Soviet Union, and China. They're the only independent countries because they're the only continental countries. And I think this is, and of course, this begs the question for Africa. If Africa was a confederated state, unified from the Mediterranean to Cape Town, no one can push it around. It has all the resources it needs to develop itself. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, this is the nightmare. Such a development is the nightmare of the West, particularly the New York City, the Wall Street, and the London-based financial establishment, which thrives on speculating on the commodities that they're stealing in Africa. And what they do is they use terrorism. And the colonial powers, they use, I mean, they've been there for 100 years. They were there for sometimes 200 or 300 years. So they know all the tricks. You take, for instance, in Mali and the other countries of the Confederation of Sahel states, they're fighting these terrorists. Now, the terrorists are actually tribes that have been living off. They survived through smuggling, and these terrorists are the same people who are smuggling cocaine from Colombia. It comes into West Africa and then it goes through the Sahel to the Mediterranean and across to Europe. What's even more interesting is I looked at one of these, the main terrorist group there, and it's interesting that this leader, this terror group, it's based on a very specific tribe. I mean, there's like 10, 20 different tribes. And this is precisely the tribe that the French used during the colonial period, when they controlled this area as part of their Algerian and North African and Sahel empire. The way they controlled these tribes, which were always raiding the settled areas of their colonies, is that they sponsored one tribe to keep control over the other tribes. And this is precisely the tribe that the terrorism is based on. So that's one way it works. I mean, the British know this very, very well. Another example, you mentioned Nigeria. I was just doing some research, and I think our friends in Nigeria know this, but there's a Biafran, in Biafra, the so-called Biafra region of Nigeria, which is in the south, which is also where the oil is. People old enough who remember the Nigerian Civil War, there was a struggle to create a Biafran state, to rip it out of Nigeria and make a separate state. Luckily, this of course was totally backed from outside Nigeria. That was defeated, but it still goes on. And there's a group which is leading this struggle, which is called the Biafran Republic Government in Exile. Its leader has just been just been convicted in a court in Finland for terrorism, for sending weapons to this region of Nigeria to carry out terrorist actions, claiming they want to liberate their country. Now, this man, before he was incarcerated in Finland, he was in the United States. And he signed a contract with an American lobbying firm called Moran. Well, it was a lobbying firm founded by American Congressman Jim Moran, the Democratic Party congressman. And it's a lobby group that is basically associated with the Democrats. They're all Democrats. And this lobby group gets $10,000 a month. I don't know where the Biafran movement gets this money to represent it on Capitol Hill. And this man who's sitting in a prison now in Finland, he was in the United States last year, and he met with Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz. He's a right-wing Republican, not very friendly to Trump. And Senator Cruz, for some reason, took up the cause of Biafran independence, and now has submitted an act in Congress to fight Christian, or to bring to the attention of the government of Christian genocide taking place in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. And it proposes to have sanctions if Nigeria doesn't change its policy. The act has not been passed yet, but I believe Senator Cruz is the source of this idea of Christian genocide in Nigeria. It doesn't stop there, but this same lobby group, and I think Clarice will be interested in this, also has another client. It's the Ambazonia Defense Forces and the Amazonia Governing Council. Now, this group at this point is actually conducting a war. This Amazonia is the English-speaking region of Cameroon. And that's their client also. So they're being chaperoned throughout the halls of the Congress and everything, bringing their cause there. This lobby group also has a Eritrean government in exile client, which is also a terrorist group. And so it goes on like that. So, I should also mention the fact that on the Biafra front, there's just been a terror case in there where they convicted a leader of this Biafran group to life imprisonment for treason and launching a rebellion. And this man, his name is Kanu, actually has British citizenship, and he has a radio station called Radio Biafra, which is based in England. The company Radio Biafra is registered at British Company's House in London, and he's never been bothered at all by the British authorities. So there you have who's actually running these terror groups, and if you look at others, you're going to find these types of connections as well.
Okay.